Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing the 1858 match between Paul Charles Morphy and Daniel Harvitz. As you know, they've already played quite a few games and Harvitz is constantly backing out from the match. He's constantly asking for more time and then he says, okay, next time we continue, then no more taking breaks, no more pauses between the games. But again, he took a break and Morphy again has to deal with it. So while Morphy's been waiting for him, he's been also enjoying some games in the Café de la Régence, but in all this time, Harvitz has also been playing games, regardless of him not meeting Morphy in the agreed time. So here, after a few days have passed, I think this game was played on the 4th of October. Harvitz said that he's feeling okay now and that he would like to continue the match with Mr. Morphy. So the score is currently 4 in favor of Morphy, 2 in favor of Harvitz, and this is the one of the later games that we'll be showing now. So let's check it out. Morphy has the white pieces and he opens with sorry about e4 already being on the board, and he opens with e4. We have e5 by Harvitz, knight to f3, we have d6, and now d4, striking in the center, so the Philidor's defense is on the board. We have bishop to g4, and this is now a setup of, quite a famous Paul Morphy game that I'm sure most of you know. Morphy continues with the d captures on e5, and now, of course, the pawn cannot be captured because then we trade queens, and then we also grab this pawn, attacking f7 and the bishop, and here white is already much better. You have to go back with the bishop to prevent both threats, and then white just continues playing the game. The position is better. He's up a pawn, probably a win for Morphy. So instead, you can't capture back right away. You have to first eliminate the knight with bishop captures, queen captures, and now d captures on e5. So the material has been equally exchanged. We have bishop to c4. Morphy develops the bishop while threatening checkmate here, and now knight to f6. This is how Harvitz defends, and now queen to b3, attacking the f7 pawn as well as the pawn on b7. So how do you prevent all of this? Well, like I said, there is a very famous game that Morphy played against two very famous gentlemen where they continued queen to e7 with the idea that if the pawn is captured with queen to b7, then queen to b4 check will be used to trade queens. Morphy then continued knight to c3, and you all know this game, the very famous one. But here we have bishop to d6 instead, and now he says, okay, you're more than welcome to grab the pawn on b7. But the f7 pawn is now also free for grabs. So this is what Morphy goes for. He goes bishop captures an f7 with check, king to f8, and now bishop to g5, developing with while pinning the knight here, knight b to d7, and now bishop to h5. We reach the position from the thumbnail, and the mate is being threatened here. So what do you play here? The bishop cannot be captured as the bishop captures queen would occur. So g6 here, defending against mate, pushing the bishop back, and now bishop to h6 check. And it is as of move 11 that this position has never been reached again. So let's see how our good friend Harvitz deals with this. He goes king to e7, and now bishop back to f3. We have knight to c5 now, attacking the queen and also defending the b7 pawn, and queen to c4 now. And here just b5, offering a pawn, and should Morphy accept this, then we play rook to b8, we kick away the queen, and we have a nice semi-open b file for our rook, while Morphy's king is still on e1 uncastled. So Morphy says, nope, I'm not in a hurry to grab any pawns, I'm just going to go back queen to e2, and now knight to e6. And even though Morphy is up a pawn and he prevented the black from castling, the king is well, he's actually quite safe on e7. It's a better position for white, make no mistake. But it's this is for a position that occurred in 1858. This is playable for black. So bishop back to e3 by Morphy, and now a6, defending the b5 pawn. We have knight to d2, now preparing to castle queenside, and king to f7. We have castles queenside by Morphy. Now the rook is aligned with the queen, so you have to be careful about that. So queen to e7, and now g3 by Morphy. Morphy really slow playing this. He wants to move the bishop. He wants to get the rook into the game, push f4, bust open the f-file, and then use the f-file to attack the black king. So we have rook h to b8. Harvitz now with rook's position on the a and b file. He would like to push those pawns and create some threats on the queen side, like we said. So bishop g2, Morphy still preparing to push that f pawn, and now a5. Both players now start pushing on their respective sides of the board. We have rook h to f1. Morphy still prepares it. Morphy really slow playing this. We have a4, and now finally f4, ready to open up the f file. We have a3. And Morphy, of course, plays b3, doesn't allow a captures on b2 to open up the a file for the rook. So king to g7 as the f file is about to open up, and now f5 by Morphy, attacking the knight, and the g6 pawn can be captured at any moment, and now knight to f8. The knight now nicely defends the g6 pawn, and here Harvitz is saying, okay, I just want to stop your advancement on the king side and continue my advancement on the queen side. So Morphy continues with g4, and now queen to e8. You have to get the queen out of the way, otherwise g5 and f6 are coming. So queen to e8 was played, and here Morphy not in a rush. You could play g5, for example, knight h5, f6, and this is all very nice. But after king to h8, it's still there's still nothing immediate to end the game, and the Morphy is always looking for things like that. So here Morphy just plays bishop to f3 first. Will come in handy later on in the game. Queen to c6 by Harvitz, and now knight to b1. You have to guard the c3 square. If you just rush it with something like g5, then queen to c3 and Harvitz wins. There's no way to prevent a loss here. You could try something like knight b1 to free up this square for the king, but it doesn't help. Like check, king here, you're going to deliver check with the bishop. You cannot push c3 due to the pin. You have to go back, and then we just play queen captures, and after this is just checkmate. Now the bishop covers this square. So Morphy has to be careful here. You have to, make sure that everything is safe on your own side of the board, and only then continue pushing pawns on the other side where you're the one who's attacking. So knight b1, defending the c3 square, and now b4. We have queen to f2 by Morphy, and now from f2, Morphy will be able to lift the queen with queen to h4, and if needed, the queen can, wreak havoc along the h file. So knight 8 to d7, and now comes finally g5. So the knight now has to move, knight g8, and now f6 with check. And here, king to h8. You could also try something like king to f7, but here you just allow queen h4, and there's really nothing you can do there. It's just a terrible position. If you play knight f8 to guard this pawn, then just bishop to e2, and again, this is really unplayable. The bishop is coming to c4, and it's just gonna be very hard to play this. Very quickly, black will lose this terribly. So instead, after f6 check, we have king to h8 by Harvitz, but now f7 by Morphy. And now Morphy says, you really don't have a good move, because if you move the knight, for example, knight to e7, then I play bishop to g4, and there's no defense here. I'm threatening to pick up the knight. The knight is the only piece covering the f6 square. If queen to f6 comes, that's a game. For example, if rook f8, we're just going to capture it, captures, and queen f6 is checkmate. So very few options here left for Harvitz. Harvitz plays knight to c5. He offers the knight here, but Morphy says, yeah, that will not help you. So just f captures and g8, queening. This comes with check, king captures, and now bishop captures on c5. We have bishop captures and queen e2. And now this is the position. Morphy's up a piece, but still, okay, Harvitz does have some sort of an attack going on the queen side. Morphy needs to keep this knight here to prevent any sort of checkmating ideas. So maybe it's not like Morphy's up a piece. Maybe the material is actually equal, as Morphy is unable to activate his knight. Or so Harvitz thinks. So here we have queen to e6, but now just knight to d2. The knight is now activated. We have king to h8, and now bishop to g4, grabbing more space here. We have queen to e7, and now knight to f3. So Morphy not really in a worry about those dark squares on the queen side. We have rook to d8, offering a rook trade, and now h4. Morphy continues pushing here. Now the knight can move. The g5 pawn is also very well defended. We have rook to d6. Harvitz ready to double up on the d file, and now rook captures. Morphy, of course, doesn't allow that. We have c captures and queen to c4 now. And you can see how Morphy is controlling these light squares, so nothing can across this. Yes, this bishop is not really doing anything. It's pretty much a pawn here. And how are you getting the rook into the game? Well, rook to f8, this is one attempt. This is what Harvitz tried. But now queen to e6. Morphy is still up a piece and he wants to trade queens. We have bishop to e3 with check, king to d1, and now queen to c7, avoiding a queen trade, still trying to get that queen into the some sort of a mating net, but Morphy stops this entirely. Knight to d2. Now, queen to c3 is, of course, met with rook captures on f8 to check, so that's out of the question. So bishop to f4 was played, closing up the f-file, but now knight to c4, and you are never getting your queen into the attack. We have queen to c5, still trying, but now just queen to d5, and now there are no squares. All of these squares are covered by either white's pieces covered by white's pieces, and there's really nothing to be done here. You could move the queen, but then you control really no squares. So here queen captures on d5 was played by Harvitz, e captures on d5, and now rook to d8 guarding the pawn here. But now it's an endgame where Morphy is just a clear pawn up, and for him that is more than enough. Rook to f3, king to g7, we have c3 here, destroying this structure on the queen side. Rook to b8, and now c captures on b4. We have rook captures, and now just king to c2, bringing the king into the game. King to f8, now king c3. The rook has to go back. Rook b5 attacks the pawn here. Just bishop to e6. And there is nothing for black to play here. There are no weaknesses in this position. This is just terrible. So this pawn is hanging, you have to defend it somehow. So rook to c5 just pins the knight, but now b4. We have rook to c7, now b5. Morphy is controlling these squares, so it's not a problem. King to e7, we have b6 attacking the rook, rook to b7, and now bishop to c8, attacking the rook, pushing the rook back, rook b8, and now b7. And now what do you play here? King d7 was played, now comes knight captures on d6. There was really nothing better for black here. King e7, knight to b5 now getting ready to push the other pawn as well. Here h6 was played, but Morphy just played d6 check, and it was in this position on move 59 that Daniel Harvitz resigned the game, and the score now stands 5-2 in Morphy's favor. So after those two wins by Daniel Harvitz, Morphy's statement was correct, as he said that Harvitz will not win a single game anymore. So really amazing stuff. And if you remember, we mentioned that the winner of the match is the first one to reach 7 victories, and Morphy only reached 5, but Harvitz nevertheless resigned the entire match. He was not interested in playing this match anymore. He said that he resigned on account of ill health, so there's also that, but you never know. As he constantly complained about being ill, about not being able to play, and then he was playing every day in Café de la Régence without accepting Morphy's challenge. So in the end, Harvitz resigned, which was a problem because Harvitz had a lot of backers. The prize money was very was steep, to say the least. It was a prize fund of 295 francs. Now I don't know how much that would be today. If any of you guys are willing to maybe break it down for us, what 295 francs maybe in 1858 would be worth today. Probably, there are different ways. Okay, if you invested it, it would be a whole lot. If you just kept it, it would be probably not that big of a difference. Maybe if you, I don't know. Maybe if you just kept it and now maybe sold it as a collector's item, maybe you'd get more. But I don't know. I've been searching around the internet a little bit, and 295 francs would be, I don't know, I guess somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 today. So it's pretty a lot. It is said that in those days, very few people reached the amount of 100 francs in their entire lifetime, and this was one match for almost 300 francs. So that being said, that was an insane amount, and Morphy, of course, declined the money. He did not want to receive the money, which was a problem because for them to satisfy everyone and for everyone to receive their fair share, Morphy had to accept it, and they would not hear any of that of Morphy not accepting his share of the money. So Morphy, in the end, had to accept it, but he not only accepted it, he also used a fair amount of that to pay for a trip for Adolf Anderssen to come to Paris and meet Morphy there. While Morphy was in Paris. This is a part from Lawson's book, so I'm just going to read it to you. Morphy immediately deposited the amount with Mr. Delanoy, a proprietor of the Café de la Régence, and had a notice posted that any of the subscribers to the stakes were at liberty to withdraw the amount to their subscriptions. The balance to be forwarded to Adolf Anderson to defray expenses for his expected trip to Paris and his contest with Mr. Morphy. So Morphy wanted to, pay for his trip. So very gentlemanly of Morphy. He was not in it for the money. He really just wanted to crush everyone. That's how, what kind of a guy Morphy was. And interestingly, okay, Morphy now won the match, and even though Harvard's backers did not feel that that was okay because he still had Morphy still had 2 more games to win before the match was ended, Harvard's then said, "Okay, let's continue the match." But Morphy said, "No, you already resigned this match. We're not playing this match anymore. But if you're interested, I'm more than interested to play yet another match." And then Harvard's declined. He was not interested in yet another match. Okay. Morphy, we're gonna continue this story in the next video of the Morphy saga, but suffice it to say, Morphy again fell a little bit ill, so he couldn't really join them when Adolf Anderson visited Paris at first. And while Morphy was sick, Daniel Harvitz organized a blindfold simultaneous exhibition where he also faced 8 opponents like Morphy did, and he won the simultaneous exhibition, of course. But it is said that strange things happened in that simultaneous exhibition, that people just blundered pieces out of nowhere, and Harvitz just collected all of them. It was like I mean, I don't want to say it, but it was like they organized everything up front, that Harvitz knew the moves that they were going to play. And interestingly, Harvitz was one of the people that was leading a chess column called Monde Illustre, and it was not, the games from the simultaneous exhibition were not even published in that chess column, and they were not published anywhere else. Harvitz did not want to allow those games to be published, so we do not have access to those games. But yeah, very interesting stuff, and a very interesting character, this Daniel Harvitz. But yeah, Morphy won the game, Morphy won the match, and we are continuing with, who knows what else might happen on this trip in the next video of the Paul Morphy saga. That's the game and the match. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Stephen McCann, Scott Mellis, Sebastian Boshar, Joel Abram, and Bruce Scottman for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.